Right here, Kenya's biggest conversation this Monday morning, the 29th of September. I know Dennis is heavy in the shoulders because he's saying, oh my goodness, where are we going? If that is what the economy looks like and debt, and I don't, you want to move? You want to move?
Anybody you ask, if you had an opportunity to move out of this country, without blinking, yes, let me relocate.
Today,
let me
are you going? You did what?
You say, why did he come back?
Why did you come back? You'd have stayed on leave.
But anyway,
that's what it looks like.
It is sad.
It is sad, and that's why I guess why we have those conversations sometimes, to lift the lid on the realities of things and try to then be able to see what's really cooking beneath the surface, and that is actually what forms the basis for the conversation that we have this hour. And as we get into it, our live streams are still up on YouTube, Facebook, and on X, and on KTN, wherever you're tuned in around the nation, the region, and the world. This is the Situation Room. We will afflict the comfortable and comfort the afflicted through the conversations that we have, and we'll continue doing that. Into Dennis with you today. And as we continue into this final conversation, Dr. Eda Tatu is here with us this morning. She's a counselling medical doctor, and she's here with us this morning. Good morning, Dr. Tatu.
Good morning, Du.
How are you doing?
Fine, thank you. How are you doing?
Very well.
Yes.
Karibu sana.
Yes.
One of the things that people don't know is that you often are tuned in and listening and watching the show and having conversations, and we say you pipe up when it then comes to medical conversations that we have, especially around the vaccines and what we may be sold as solutions to certain things. So you've often joined us in that sphere and in that arena. So it's good to have you in the studio this morning. What we're looking at today is debunking some of the myths around COVID. Many things were said. We'll come into some of those in just a minute. But Dennis is going to welcome you to the show. We'd love to get your interpretation of today's proverb.
Yes, today we are in the Comoros. It's a beautiful country that is known for vanilla, and it's called yin and yang.
Ling lang,
which is used for making perfumes, and also cloves, which is huge when it comes to the cuisine. And you would talk about their culture, which is mostly influenced by Swahili, Arabic, and the Malagasy traditions. And when you have an opportunity to go there, so they have the kazoo, which is an outfit for men, and for women it's called shira. So if you have an opportunity for going there, you ask for shira and have a bit and taste of what they have to offer there. But let's go to the proverb. You can win a woman with lies, but you cannot feed her with lies. You can win a woman with lies, but you cannot feed her with lies. How would you interpret that?
Oh, wow. That's very interesting. I think that it's actually quite straightforward, that, but it can be taken as figurative also. You can, there's something called an emotional bank account. So you can convince somebody emotionally through the way you speak to them, and their emotional bank account is high. But every time you don't fulfill the promise, it's like you're making a withdrawal until you reach zero, and then it becomes to negative, and it's not sustainable. Lies are not sustainable. So the only way you can keep the emotional bank account high is by keeping your promises. So I see it.
Well put.
Very well put.
Yeah.
Okay. So in 2019, November, December, we started to hear rumblings, and the chatter was real, that there's this now new disease that is moving in from the eastern part of the world, and that because of travel, we're likely to see it on this side of the globe, and then it was starting to spread. All right. We came out of Christmas and into 2020, and by that time, Italy was on its knees. Parts of Western Europe were starting to suffer. Doctors came out of retirement. People were dying in the streets of hospitals and were being mass graves, essentially, were being put up to bury the dead who died from this thing, which we now hear is called COVID-19. Before we knew it, we were told how as Africans we were going to drop off the face of the earth like flies. And then Big Pharma went to work and they said, you know what? We need to now get a vaccine that's going to treat these people. And then campaigns began. The World Health Organization told us that we need to wash our hands and that we need to stay away from each other and that we need to cover our faces with masks. And then the world shut down. For 9 months, nobody went anywhere. Flights were grounded. Presidents were having meetings by Zoom. Businesses flourished in one way because then now things that people never knew became the new normal. In fact, that was a phrase. The new normal came out of COVID. Mm-hmm. And then the man to your left, who this morning has been baptized as mtu ambaye anatafuta wakora, also did some stories about things that were happening as a result of COVID. All of this happened, country shut down, and then we were told there's a vaccine. And we jabbed ourselves, we lined up, jabbed ourselves across countries. And then they said, yeah, in order for this thing to work really well, jab yourselves again. So we jabbed twice. Then others, the man to your right, jabbed 3 times. People were jabbed once, twice. Others said never. This is a conspiracy theory. Somebody wants to get rich somewhere, and that's why they're asking us to jab ourselves for a common flu that people can get over. Dr. Eda Tatu, you are one of those who believe, or according to what you say, with the evidence, that some of these things were not necessary. Please, walk us through.
I think the original plan, there's something called what we call Hegelian dialectic. So it's very diabolical. And the people who wanted to bring the so-called vaccine knew that they could only have mass vaccination that would be to their gain and their profit. Once it's called create a problem, get a reaction, and then come in with the solution that you had planned all along. Yeah, so there's something that we call the cabal, the people who actually rule the world. And in conjunction with the World Health Organization, and the United Nations, they had always planned to get this profit from the so-called, I don't call it a vaccine. And so what they needed to do was create terror in the masses. And so they created this biological weapon. Actually, COVID-19 was a biological weapon that created the disease in people, so that people could see that, and then they would, by continuous messaging in the media, using the mass media to terrify people to death, and then say the only way we can get back to normal is by this solution, which they had planned all along. So it was very diabolical, and it wasn't a vaccine as we know it, which a vaccine is to prevent disease, but this was a depopulating agent. Both of them are depopulating agents. The COVID disease, which was a biological weapon, which was produced by gain of function, there was actually a moratorium against that. But that Dr. Fauci actually paid the Wuhan lab, gave them the grant to come up with this disease that would cause a lot of mayhem in the world, so that then everything was planned in Event 201, October 2019. They simulated everything that they were going to do, and then in early 2020, they actually rolled it out. Okay. In medicine, we're supposed to give hope. There's never been a situation where you go at 3:00 every day to tell people how many people have died. Causing despair in people so that they would be so terrified, and basically breaking down the economic system through the lockdowns. Everything was planned. In Event 201, they even had the World Health Organization and the cabal. They even simulated what they were going to do.
Okay, Dr. Tatu.
Yeah.
How do we know this? The things that you say are very serious. And you say it with such ease. I'm wondering, how do you know this? Where do you get this information from that essentially says that folks plan? And we know that Dr. Fauci at some point was interdicted by the US Senate over some of these things that you say.
Yes.
But to the extent that he paid a lab in Wuhan
Yes.
to create what you're calling a weapon of biological warfare.
Yes.
That's major.
Yes.
Where do you get this information?
All these things
And
are
how
in,
do we-
They're in the public domain.
They could be in the public
They're
domain,
in
but
the
that doesn't
public
mean that they're
domain.
true.
The letter from NIAID has been exposed from Dr. Fauci. That one you can get it's all in the public domain. There's a lecture that Dr. David Martin gave to the World Health Organization in 2023, and he exposed all that. And all these documents are actually out there that you can get them. I would never say anything by hearsay. And Dr. David Martin is actually mandated. He actually has his whole career is about bioweapons, so he is very qualified to say these things. And I was a member of the International Association of the Disease-Free World from 2020. And we always used to have these lectures, and they used to expose all these things that were going on. They called us conspiracy theorists, but it has turned out to be conspiracy realists. And so all these things actually turned out to be true, because people have died en masse, and we continue to lose people that we love from the so-called vaccine, which is what Dr. Zelenko so rightly called the poison death trap. Yeah, so not everybody was given that. Let me give you hope that many people were injected with saline and water because they knew that if everybody started getting sick, there would be a lot of suspicion. So depending on the batch that you got, then you are safe, especially if you're not sick until now.
Okay, you say we.
Yeah.
You've said we a couple of times, that
Yeah.
we know. We. Who is we? And then are you part of a group or consortium of folks? You are a medical doctor.
Yes.
Have you studied along these lines? Are you part of an association who, having then established some of these things, maybe give us some of that background for us to then understand how then you can say we?
Okay, there was an International Association for a Disease-Free World, which I still belong to. And then there were so many doctors whose sole aim was to get the truth out there and get people treated. And we were treating people, the Kenya Catholic Doctors Association. I'm a member of that association. And we were actually treating people, and we also treated ourselves when we got COVID. But because they were so, the cabal, the World Health Organization cabal, was so determined to have this rollout of the jab and benefit from it materially, they suppressed the fact that ivermectin was working. These were repurposed drugs like ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine and zinc. So we were giving all these medications, and people were getting well. But they knew that they wouldn't be allowed to have the emergency use authorization, which is what they were aiming for. The emergency use authorization, EUA, would only be allowed if there was no alternative. So that was the narrative out there, that there's absolutely no treatment. People are falling like flies. And so also we had the Kenya Catholic Doctors Association and a multitude of doctors internationally who were being silenced, who were being cancelled, who were being sacked from their jobs, deregistered. So it was like an international coalition of doctors who, for the truth, basically. But the mass media was much, much louder than we were, and people were terrified of losing their jobs. Myself, I've got nothing to lose, so...
Because you work for yourself.
Yes, I work for myself, but most doctors, even those who have discovered what went down, they're not going to say it because they have their jobs to look after.
Dr. You called this a biological weapon that was launched against masses, right?
Yes.
And you talk about Wuhan and Dr. Fauci. And just on the face of it, one would ask the question, you talk about Wuhan is China, Dr. Fauci is America, and enter in the geopolitics that do exist. At what point and using what evidence then do you say what it is you're saying and allegations you're giving?
Actually, they're not allegations, they're accusations, because the letter is out there. and there was a moratorium. A moratorium is something that prohibits you from doing gain-of-function research. Gain-of-function research is about how to make a pathogen as pathogenic and as harmful as possible to human beings. And so that was already it was already prohibited in the US. So what they did was to have the research being done in this particular lab outside the country. But the aim was to get a pathogen as pathogenic as possible to cause disease, then get the reaction problem solution. And Fauci has also been accused of lying in broad daylight. He actually said that when people are the only way we can get people to agree to this and deny their ideological BS, that's what he called it.
He's been accused. I've been accused.
Yeah.
I've been accused of wearing a red shirt on a Monday morning. Could be true, could not be true. He's been accused. It's not been proven. There's nobody who has come up and said, I was in the room when Dr. Fauci paid somebody to come up with biological warfare. There was a letter. Who was this letter by? Who was it delivered to?
The NIAD letterhead is there with his signature.
I could come up with a letterhead today, Doctor.
I can Photoshop
I
it.
can do a letterhead today and say that it was written by Dr. Eda Tatu. I could do that.
Yeah, you
Anybody
could.
There has to be beyond reasonable doubt that something like this has happened, and it would have some traction on the global scale for us to say, wait a minute, there's something here.
Yeah,
There doesn't seem to be anything like that. From what you're saying.
No, because the Dr. David Martin is actually mandated to do that.
By whom, for what?
For the American, he works for the America. He works in the United States.
As who?
And he's actually been mandated to be like the watchdog for bioweapons. Yeah.
In what
And
organization?
That is his career.
In what organization?
By
the American government?
Yes, by the American government. That's actually his. So when he says that it is, and he came up with that letter and it was never denied, and he made this presentation to the World Health Organization, that is what came out, and it is true. And the problem is that the World Health Organization had already from 1947 had declared itself immune for all types of prosecution. So that is why we're in the situation that we're in. It's to raise awareness, because you can sue for any product in the world if you have an adverse effect. But when it comes to vaccines, the vaccine cabal has actually allowed themselves to have complete immunity to that.
Well,
and in a document that was signed by President Bush in 2005. So that is the dilemma that we're in. It's just advising people to find out whether a jab is necessary. Like you said, always start with the question, is this necessary? Especially in light of there being any other treatment. Yeah, for example.
Well, this doctor that you've actually quoted a few times has been, in terms of credibility and just evaluating a lot of the statements that he's made, he's also been mentioned as someone who's come across as making very extreme claims that either lack scientific proof or peer reviews, and also there are questions around verifying a lot of the things that he's also said, and in terms of framing of events and situations like this one now we're discussing, there are fact checkers that have said, look, the things that are very scientific, and I just want us to take a step back from all these different views and just look at the coronavirus we knew. The thing is, before 2019, coronavirus actually was there, just like other viruses. The Ebola virus the Marburg virus, there is the Lassa fever virus, and there's so many other these different types of viruses that come as a result of human-animal interactions, for example, either from rodents or from bats in the case of coronavirus. And you start to trace from the 60s when there was the first case that was reported, and this was in Europe, but this was not, there were respiratory issues when the first case was reported. Then the build-up, and this is all scientific, there's evidence that backs these claims. Then you come to 2019, you're saying that Fauci actually funded a lab in Wuhan that then ended up creating this virus in the lab, then to unleash it first in Wuhan, China, killing so many people there, then spread it around the world to depopulate. So the agenda was to depopulate the world. Is that what you're saying? And you've mentioned a cabal that then was behind this, and you've mentioned WHO was behind this. So how is WHO then benefiting from depopulating the earth? You mentioned the issue is making money.
Yes.
Then money to do what? To create more vaccines, or money to do what?
You know that the World Health Organization is 88% funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Yeah.
So Bill Gates is also part of the cabal.
Oh, yes. Yeah, definitely. He's done a lot. He's spent a lot of money to clear up his image as a philanthropist. But actually, even he himself has said that most of the money he has made is from the vaccine industry. He gets his money back through that. And what you're talking about, the coronavirus as a pathogen was first isolated in 1965 in the United States. And then in 1966, that is when and between 1966 and 1967, that's when the United States of America and the UK had a collaboration to try and make it infectious to the human being, so that they could create a vaccine for it. And so this is how far the issue goes. And the World Health Organization has, there's three parts. There's actually, did you know that there's a Council for Eugenics inside the World Health Organization? It has a Eugenics department. The eugenics is actually a pseudoscience, and it's all about how to reduce the undesirable populations from the world. And this is what has been, even the first and second directors of the World Health Organization actually put this as part of their vision for the World Health Organization, is to reduce the population of the world.
Why? What's the benefit of reducing the world's population? You know that
the eugenics department, eugenics is all about there being a hierarchy of races, with the blonde and the blue-eyed, the Aryan at the very top, and the Africans at the bottom. And Africans we have resources. So it makes sense to reduce the African population.
But Africans didn't die during COVID. Africans did not die during COVID. That was what the thought would be. I believe it was Melinda Gates who actually said to people, well, this is actually going to affect Africans. It didn't. Italians died. Americans died. Brits died. The people that you're saying essentially eugenics would protect died in greater number.
But the whole idea was to bring the jab. Are you understanding the Hegelian dialectic?
No, the idea didn't come to fruition.
It didn't come to fruition,
COVID,
yes.
Right? So can we actually say that based on what you're saying, that if that was the thought, if this eugenics department operates with or exists within the World Health Organization, and if one of the ways to then be able to make the ideology come through was through COVID, that was a big belly flop.
Yeah, it did flop because, first of all, the idea didn't take very well in Africa, did it? And you need to remember that we have sunshine, we have access to vitamin D, which is something that's very big in the immunity. Our diet is much better. We have water we drink plenty of water. But actually, if you look at the countries where the people really died, their diet is not good. So the
Italian diet is one of the best diets in the world. It's the Mediterranean diet, one of the best.
The elderly.
Natural. They grew up eating this food. How did they die in number?
Well, they had a lower immunity. That's what I know.
The older Italians have come up with 50 years of eating olives and tomatoes and living off of the Mediterranean diet is being used for diets around the world today. If what you're saying is true, Dr. Tatu, why did we have Italians essentially being the ones dying like flies off the face of the earth if what you're saying is true? From COVID. Not anything else. Doctors were called out of retirement to take care of the sick who were coming in droves to Italian hospitals. Why?
Well, it's not necessarily that they were eating the Mediterranean diet, but there was a lot of death in the Western countries because of the lower immunity. Because there is a lot of, especially like in America, you have the African Americans tend to eat a lot of junk.
Did the people who, the folks who work in the World Health Organization, and of course we know that they have their tentacles around the world. When you talk about sun, Africans have sun. They drink a lot of water. Did they not know this?
This is what in fact, all that information was being suppressed, just like access to the repurposed drugs.
Oh, come on, they've been here. They know. There's a CDC on the African continent, for crying out loud.
Yes,
Did they not know that Africa has sun? Did they not know that it's possible that people could actually fight this disease with their immunity based on what is available on the African continent, the sun, the drinking of the water, the traditional diets? They must have known this. And so they've thought, maybe we should tweak this a little bit more. If we're going to kill these people and suppress the population with this disease, we should also know. It seems to me that it's such an elaborate plan that they would have had and not taken into consideration that the sun exists in Africa.
In fact, I think you have a very pure heart, Ndu. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's very hard for, one thing we've realized, very hard for the African mind to understand how people can be sitting in a room.
I can understand. Please understand my question.
Yes.
How did somebody come up with such a scientifically elaborate plan to do away with populations of Africa and still not take into consideration the things that you have said, that our immunity is stronger because we have access to the sun, because we drink water, because we have traditional food? You don't come up with such an elaborate scientific plan to do away with populations and not consider things that are natural to this habitat. How do you do that? These are guys who could pinpoint you from where you sit right here, but they don't know that there's sun on the continent?
They do. If you would let me just speak, the whole plan was to bring out the vaccination en masse. You do understand that. And so the way they were going to do it, the maximum number of deaths was not really supposed to come through the bioweapon of COVID. It was supposed to come through the jabs. And the only way people would accept to be jabbed en masse was if they were terrified to death. You understand? So that the whole plan was the Hegelian dialectic. I said the problem, the reaction, and the solution. And all these recommendations that we, the doctors who were trying to save lives, talking about vitamin D, talking about diet, all these things were being very much suppressed in the population. So unless you were in that WhatsApp group, and if you had talked about these things, in fact, the word vaccine would have your video deleted from YouTube. Most of the information you'll find is on Rumble and the alternative, the media. But if you have the word vaccine, if you had the word COVID, your video was flagged and everything was pushed down. So people used to muzzle, like when you're saying vaccine, you just say zzz, or if you want to say COVID, just say something like that, because there was a very calculated campaign to make sure people do not know that there was alternative treatment from repurposed drugs, that diet and vitamin D was saving people. If you even notice that the people who were actually dying en masse in Kenya were the middle and upper class who didn't really sit out in the sun a lot. People in the estates. But like if you look at the slum areas, places like Kibera, where there's so many in the house probably, they all just go out first thing in the morning, they have access to sunshine. There were actually no deaths.
But we also know there was the idea of herd immunity.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There was also that conversation. The things that you've said, and I just want to follow a certain train of thought. There's an argument. If you look at the budgets for a lot of these pharmaceutical companies, then the money that they make from vaccines is much less compared to the money that they make through chronic disease drugs, for example. So the argument that the plan was to roll out vaccines to make money, it's not sustainable then in the long term compared to chronic disease drugs. So that is one argument. And I don't want to get into the details of it because I'll then very easily get into conspiracy theories around this. But those were facts in terms of the budgets and where they make their money from. But in terms of looking at the origins of this, because you've said this thing was actually manufactured as a bioweapon, we've looked at scientific and credible evidence then of SARS-CoV-2 before we started talking about COVID-19. And the closest relatives of the virus were found in wild bats. That is a fact. And this is in southern China and Southeast Asia. Now, the two scientific hypotheses, because I covered this story in COVID Millionaires, the two things that we're looking at, one is if this is a natural spillover, which then you tend to disagree and say this was actually clearly planned. The natural spillover then from wildlife to human beings. And then from human beings, they start spreading it amongst themselves. And the second bit was now this accidental or deliberate lab leak, that this thing was manufactured in a lab in Wuhan, and then it was spread, the virus was spread around the world. These two are still being studied. However, there's a Wuhan Institute of Virology and Funding, which does a lot of the researches on coronaviruses, where this thing actually leaked from. And some of the research, which the US intelligence in the assessment actually ended up declassifying in 2023, saying that the virus was actually not developed as a biological weapon. These, are just records as well. So we can quote records that then declassify this, and we can also quote records that then speak of, okay, so Dr. Fauci was mentioned, or there was a letter that then is purported to have been written, and money that was actually that was paid. So the claim that COVID-19 then was designed to reduce the world population has had a challenge in getting verifiable data and facts. So the thing is, when we say that it was released to depopulate the world, the people that it ended up killing in Europe, Ndo's quoted Italy, in the United States itself, Asia, from all the way from India, all over, it was not picking certain individuals. This thing was killing so many people. And the thing is, when you say natural selection, so it is, if you get it, depending on your immunity status and so many other factors, then you are prone to either have long-term effects of the virus, or you'll actually simply die. So if the plan was to depopulate the world, how are they insulating themselves from, or people who are close to them from not getting this virus to begin with?
Okay, first of all, I'd like to refute the fact that they didn't make money. Pfizer and Moderna actually did make a lot of money. That's why the word COVID and vaccine is not having your channel flagged and demonetized or whatever. They've already made a lot of money, in the hundreds of billions. Yeah. So that one is in the public domain also, the kind of money that they have made. And yes, a lot of money. I think we go back to the issue that the money was to be, it is, there are three things that they do to make the money, to depopulate the world, and of course, that is the Hegelian dialectic is. I'm going back to the solution. The the problem, create a problem. That problem was not the one that was going to be the massive depopulation. The depopulation was going to come from the massive vaccination exercises, which is how they got their money. And like you said, the big pharmaceutical agencies.
Wait, did you say, so the depopulation was not the release of the virus itself, it's now the vaccines?
No, it was from, the release of the virus itself was to create the terror, to get the problem, and then you get the reaction from the people, lockdowns and all, everything was planned, how you get the lockdowns and people losing their businesses and all that. And then you telling them that we will only go back to normal when this happens, like telling people you will not get a job. You had talked about yourself being coerced. Many people were coerced into it, and all this is against the Hippocratic oath that we doctors took, which is fully informed consent. First of all, you're supposed to do no harm. That is non-maleficence. The second one, always do good. Number 3 is fully informed consent. And the fourth one is justice for all, including exposing when malpractices are performed. So this whole thing of the emergency use authorization, the doctors calling this safe and effective. And yet, in fact, Pfizer and Moderna themselves have confessed that they talked that it was an experimental. It was an experimental mRNA agent. But they even said that if we had used those words, experimental mRNA gene therapy, nobody would have accepted the jab. But they have confessed that that's what it was, and now they had to call it a vaccine so that people who were terrified to death. I mean, we're having like car accidents, like 10,000 car accidents. People are dying of malaria. People are dying from AIDS. But at 3:00 every day, you would have what's his name, Mutahi and Mwangangi on TV telling how many people have died. And the numbers were much less than from car accidents and other things. So the whole idea was to terrify people to death so that they would
take the vaccine. So Dr. Tatu, so the idea is, okay, create all this chaos and reactions.
Yes.
Then people take vaccines.
Yes.
So the depopulation now is after people have taken the vaccines.
So not from the disease itself.
Not from the disease. The disease itself was to create the fear.
So, Dr. My question is,
they knew they would get
while creating the fear and coming up with this bioweapon, as you call it, you look at the people who died because of the bioweapon. It was from the West. So my question to you is, was this bioweapon targeted to the people in the West because then they knew that the terror would be sent? But then again, there is the question of the batch numbers of people who were injected. You say some were injected with saline and water. What evidence do you have to show that actually happened? And did you take any of these batches into laboratories for you to say, this happened, this is my evidence? Because absence of that, all that you're saying remains just being hearsay.
You can actually trace your batch number, and there's something which is called
Have you traced any batch numbers yourself for you to say?
Not personally, but I know people who have.
So then what evidence would you have to back everything that you're saying right now?
Okay, there's the international organization called VAERS, the Vaccine Adverse Effects Association, where you can actually send when you've had an adverse effect, you can actually write to the organization and tell them that you've had an incident. So under that organization, then you just say the hospital and you get the batch number. That's where people were doing it from. But people were not, people are actually very afraid of speaking out, because they do remember the people who were being called anti-vaxxers, and they were mocking them. So now it's like they are feeling very ashamed that they did get adverse effects, and they have one of them, they're generally afraid of being picked up and being harassed and being tortured. So they we try to convince them that they can. Some have, but some haven't. And so there are many Kenyans who are suffering the adverse effects of the jab. There's a lady who even came to me at a funeral with her. I saw her introducing herself, and she actually gave me her husband's funeral. You have this funeral? What do you call it?
Eulogy.
Yeah, the eulogy magazine. And she's telling me my husband died of lung failure after the COVID infection.
Was there any lab
after
tests?
the COVID infection, not the vaccine?
So there's some people who actually died. In fact, we have many friends who passed on from the COVID infection. But you see, the whole response of the World Health Organization suppressing the treatment, and then putting people under ventilation, and giving people a drug which is called remdesivir, which actually causes kidney failure. All these were on the protocol. And remdesivir had been banned they had found it to be very, very toxic during the Ebola pandemic. So this is what they were now saying must be used. So that is how my friend also died, She was given remdesivir, she was put on a ventilator, and it was like, they were using methods that were known to cause death. So we did lose a lot of people from the infection itself, but now we continue to lose people from myocarditis, from clots, from stroke. Many women and men are actually infertile. So we're getting so many problems now, which are coming so much longer after the fact. But even Dr. Peter Makolo has said that 73 up to 74% of the deaths were found to be caused by the jab. So, like in those in the Western countries, the people who died from the jab were after the jab were investigated, and postmortems were done, and it was found that up to 74% were directly related to the jab. And Dr. Arne, who has done all the postmortems in America, he came back from retirement. He did all the postmortems, and he directly was able to relate it to, because you become, after the jab, you start making spike proteins. If you've gotten the poison one, it makes you produce
Sorry, if you've
spike
received
proteins.
the poisoned one?
Yeah.
The poison jab.
The poison jab.
Okay.
Yeah.
Poison
So-
vaccine.
mRNA.
Okay, so you're
Yeah.
saying for us who took the jab,
Not all of them are poisoned.
no, the
Yeah.
Tatu just hang on.
Yeah.
So for those who took Johnson and Johnson, I don't
was
know
my
which one
third.
you took. You
That
took
was my third,
Johnson
yeah.
and Johnson.
Yeah.
Which one did you take? Pfizer.
Yes, I took
There
the
was
Pfizer
Pfizer and there
one.
was the
I
first
also
one.
took the Pfizer one, and then
Moderna.
we were later told you can actually
Mix them.
You can mix them. It's not a problem. So the first jab was the Pfizer, second one was Johnson. So you're saying these vaccines in our bodies, the whole agenda of this whole conversation is to depopulate the earth.
Yeah.
So if you're not dying instantly through the virus itself, then you have long-term effects or sicknesses and illnesses that will catch up with you later in the years that then will lead to deaths and therefore depopulating the earth. That was the agenda.
And morbidity, yeah.
And morbidity.
Yeah.
So you're saying infertility is one of them.
Oh, yes. We have
In both men and women?
Yes, we have a huge upsurge of people who are suffering from infertility right now.
Is there any research to back what you're saying?
Yes, there's a lot of research. In fact, there's the whole book
done
that
locally
is
here in
out.
Kenya, and one would ask the question in terms of infertility cases in the country as we speak today.
Yeah.
What are the numbers before COVID and after COVID?
That research, I don't have the numbers for that. But what I do know is that in 2014, the World Health Organization actually did roll out a so-called vaccine called the anti-tetanus vaccine. They made a campaign for all women of reproductive age from 15 to 45 to come for the tetanus toxoid to, in inverted commas, prevent their child from getting tetanus. And the Catholic Doctors Association actually took samples from those and discovered that there was something called beta HCG in there that was actually bound to the toxoid the tetanus toxoid, to make the woman make antibodies to any future children. So the women were actually aborting their children without knowing it, and many of them became sterile. Actually, one of my friends is one of them, and they actually did isolate that. So this is one of the reasons why we cannot trust the World Health
Are you a proponent of vaccines? Because the association you're referring to has rejected a lot of vaccines, including baby vaccines, women vaccines. Do you believe in vaccines?
I'm not an anti-vaxxer. All my children are vaccinated. The problem I have with is unnecessary vaccines. Yeah? So like Ndu started with the beginning, the first question you should ask is it necessary? Because really we're a third world country, and we need money for things like malaria, we need things for TB. So if you have something, for example, if you take the hepatitis vaccine for a newborn, every mother in Kenya is tested for hepatitis B, blood group. You have wives, and she's tested for HIV. This is a sexually transmitted disease. My children are all vaccinated, but they're all adults. Now, why would you introduce hepatitis vaccine for a newborn, a sexually transmitted disease, in a baby whose mother has been tested for hepatitis? What's the rationale? Because it's very good to test for hepatitis B when somebody is sexually active. This child, I'm assuming they won't be active for the next 10 years, at least. So why are we giving hepatitis jab to a newborn, and it protects somebody for 10 years? So the rationale is actually there's a lot of things which are unnecessary.
Like what? So what are the necessary vaccines? What are the necessary vaccines? Hepatitis clearly is an unnecessary vaccine, according
for a newborn,
for
right?
a newborn, according to what you said. So what are the necessary ones then?
I would think of, like this rollout of, what is this vaccine which is being given to girls in schools as an anti-cancer vaccine? HPV, If you do your pap smear, it can actually protect you. It can actually...
it will show you if there is an abnormal growth of cells. Okay.
So every 2-3 years, if you do your pap smear, that is enough. So the so-called HPV vaccine only prevents against like 2 strains. So why is it being rolled out en masse on our daughters as a mandatory vaccine and then marketed? You see, the marketing is very important as an anti-cancer vaccine, anti-cancer. But yes, it's true that cancer of the cervix is caused by this virus, HPV, But when you give your 13-year-old girl, for example, the HPV vaccine, what are you telling her? Because it's an STD, isn't it? You're telling her it's kind of like a license to become sexually active.
Oh, that's one side of the argument.
So anyway,
a blanket thing that you're saying.
So anyway, what I'm saying is, if there's something much more cost-effective, like a pap smear, as soon as you become sexually active, you can do a pap smear every 2-3 years, which will show abnormal cells in the cervix, and that can be treated very quickly, very on a much cost-effective scale, compared to just en masse giving high school girls an HPV jab, which has actually been found. If you check the documentary Sacrificial Virgins, that will tell you how many people have sued because of the adverse effects, especially neurological, of the so-called HPV vaccine.
Okay.
But it was actually pulled off YouTube, and you'll only find it on Rumble and other alternative media.
One of the issues is the time that it took. We should go back to COVID for a little bit because our time is running out. Is the time that it took to develop the COVID vaccine. We have vaccines that we're using today that have been in trial runs for decades. and then it, brings them forth after a very long time. Does this give rise to any of the worry that we see? I believe because the world shut down for 9 months essentially, and then we started to see some movement in October, November. This vaccine, you said, whatever this was, according to you, is that it took about 4 months to go through trial stage and then presented as in viable to use on human population. Was that an issue as well?
Yes, it was a very it was a very serious issue, and that is why they wanted to fast track it under the emergency use authorization,
yes,
so that they could roll it out. It takes usually minimum of 10 years before a vaccine can be rolled out with multiple tests. Yeah. So the fact that it was rolled out under emergency use authorization, and they had to fast track it because they were suppressing all these alternative treatments that we were giving. They were sacking all the doctors. They were deregistering the doctors. For example, like they had to tell all the gynecologists in America that you'll actually lose your license if you don't give it to expectant women. And there were horrific events. 80% of the women who were given in the first trimester actually lost their babies.
So it was to depopulate America now.
You know, do you know that there's actually an NSSM document by the Henry Kissinger, 1974, which says that all the foreign policy to the third world is going to be about the depopulation. But it seems like now they've actually, it's just blanket because
across the world.
America, the US, even Bill Gates actually gave a TED talk where he said the population is going to 9 billion and we want it to be 500 million. So, and we're going to do it through vaccines, you see, and reproductive health services, which is obviously the sexual and reproductive health and rights, which is depopulation on steroids. Abortion, contraception, and all that.
It's a conversation that could take us days to then be able to get through. There are many, many proponents of both sides of this conversation, and in terms of what really did happen with COVID-19, trying to then be able to come out and have a lot of these things come to the fore is the necessity of this conversation. And of course, the theories remain in people's minds in terms of what may or may not have happened. But one thing that rings true is that fact is fact, and regardless of whatever side that fact then comes through, is perhaps what we continue chasing. And let's see. But we want to thank you for being part of this conversation this morning. Dr. Eda Tatu is a counseling medical doctor. She's been here with us this morning, trying to debunk some of the myths around COVID-19, its vaccines, and what's happening with the world's population today. Our research continues. Our conversations continue. Thank you so much, Dr. Terry. And
thank you for having me.
Thank you. And for starting off this week's Situation Room this Monday. Asante Sana, everybody. The conversations continue. Have yourselves a good day.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.